Did you know that before 1905, no Asian nation had ever defeated a European power in modern warfare? The Russo-Japanese War of 1905 had far-reaching consequences that continue to shape our world today. This conflict set in motion events that would lead to the end of colonialism, the rise of Asian powers, and even influence civil rights movements in the United States. From Gandhi's philosophy of nonviolence to Sun Yat-sen's vision for a modern China, the impact of this war extended well beyond its immediate participants. Naval revolution, the rise of dreadnoughts. Imagine waking up one day to find that everything you knew about naval combat was wrong. That's exactly what happened to naval strategists worldwide after the Russo-Japanese War. This conflict in the Far East challenged centuries of naval doctrine and introduced revolutionary changes in naval warfare. Before the war, naval technology was evolving, but the Russo-Japanese War accelerated this process dramatically. The Battle of Tsushima in 1905 was a pivotal moment. Japan's coordinated fleet movements and long-range gunnery decimated the Russian fleet, demonstrating the importance of speed, coordinated attacks, and the power of modern battleships. Naval observers from around the globe were stunned by Japan's ability to outmaneuver and outgun the Russians. The conflict's lessons were profound. Naval strategists realized that future battles would be decided by long-range gunnery before ships could even see each other clearly. This insight led to a significant shift in battleship design, exemplified by the HMS Dreadnought. Launched by Britain in 1906, this revolutionary ship featured a uniform main battery of big guns, turbine engines for greater speed, and improved armor. The Dreadnought's design made all existing battleships obsolete overnight, resetting naval power and sparking a global arms race. The war's outcome profoundly influenced international perceptions of military technology and strategy. It demonstrated that technological superiority could overcome numerical advantages, a lesson that would be applied in conflicts for decades to come. Its influence on industrial and technological development was equally profound. The war exposed the critical importance of logistics and infrastructure in modern warfare. Before 1905, military production was largely small-scale and often done by hand. The Russo-Japanese War changed this dramatically. Both sides faced enormous logistical challenges that demanded new solutions. Russia had to transport troops and supplies across Siberia, while Japan needed to maintain supply lines over the sea. This conflict highlighted the crucial role of transportation infrastructure. The Trans-Siberian Railway, though incomplete, was vital for Russia's war effort. It allowed for troop and material movement, but also revealed Russia's industrial shortcomings. Japan effectively used its modern steamship fleet to supply its forces on the Asian mainland. The war demonstrated the link between industrial development, technological innovation, and military effectiveness. Japan's rapid industrialization during the Meiji period proved advantageous. They could produce high-quality weapons and ammunition more efficiently than Russia, giving them an edge despite their smaller size and resource base. Consider the impact of machine guns in the conflict. Japan had adopted and produced these weapons in large numbers, while Russia lagged behind. This technological advantage allowed Japanese forces to hold off larger Russian units in defensive operations. As the war progressed, industrial capacity emerged as a key factor in determining the outcome. Military observers from around the world studied not just the fighting, but the complex supply chains and industrial systems supporting it. The conflict's lessons reshaped military thinking for decades. Nations began to view their industrial base as crucial to national defense. The concept of total war, where a nation's entire economic and industrial might supports the war effort, began to take shape. Japan's success wasn't due to any single technological advancement, but rather a comprehensive approach to industrial warfare. Their efficient production and transport of modern weapons, from rifles to battleships, provided a crucial advantage. The adoption of advanced communications technology, including field telephones and wireless telegraphs, allowed for better coordination of forces. In essence, the Russo-Japanese War showed that modern warfare depended as much on factories and railroads as on soldiers and strategies. It accelerated the industrialization of conflict, setting the stage for the total wars of the 20th century. This pivotal moment reminds us that the engines of modern warfare often operate far from the battlefield, in the heart of a nation's industrial capacity. The Russo-Japanese War transformed more than just naval warfare. It revolutionized the world of espionage. Before the conflict, military intelligence was a relatively simple affair, with nations relying on diplomats and military attachés for information gathering. These gentlemen spies operated in formal settings, rarely venturing beyond embassies and officers' clubs. moves. But the war changed everything. Both Russia and Japan recognized the critical importance of accurate intelligence in modern warfare. They deployed extensive networks of spies and informants across East Asia, gathering information on troop movements, fortifications, and military capabilities. This marked a shift from gentlemanly information gathering to a more aggressive, professional approach to espionage. Japan excelled in this new world of spycraft, utilizing a sophisticated network of operatives to gather critical information about Russian military positions and strategies. They recruited local civilians, merchants, and even fishermen to act as eyes and ears in Russian-controlled territories. The war also attracted foreign military attachés and observers, eager to learn from this clash of empires. These neutral observers often walked a fine line between official observation and covert intelligence gathering. Their reports shaped not only their home country's understanding of the war, but also influenced global military doctrine for years to come. New technologies played a crucial role in this intelligence revolution. The telegraph allowed for rapid transmission of information, while advances in photography made it easier to document enemy positions and equipment. These technological tools, combined with human intelligence, created a more comprehensive and timely picture of the battlefield than ever before. Interestingly, Poland, which didn't exist as an independent state at the time, played a significant role in this espionage drama. Polish intelligence operatives, hoping to weaken Russia and advance their own national cause, actively collaborated with Japan during the war. They provided critical intelligence about Russian troop movements and engaged in sabotage operations against Russian forces. This Polish-Japanese cooperation involved sharing strategic intelligence on Russian military plans and capabilities. Polish agents helped disrupt Russian supply lines and communication networks, contributing to Japan's eventual victory. The collaboration often involved financial support, with Japan providing monetary assistance to Polish nationalist groups in exchange for their help. As the war progressed, it became clear that this new approach to intelligence gathering was here to stay. The success of both Japanese and Polish espionage efforts demonstrated the critical importance of covert operations in modern warfare. Nations around the world took note, leading to the establishment of formal intelligence agencies and the professionalization of espionage in the years that followed. The Russo-Japanese War changed how nations gathered and used information. The shadowy world of spies and secrets that we often associate with the Cold War actually has its roots in this conflict from the early 20th century. This pivotal moment in history reshaped not just borders and alliances, but the very nature of international relations and conflict. Shifting sands. The new balance of power in Asia. The traditional European dominance in Asian affairs was suddenly challenged by an Asian nation. The immediate effects were dramatic. Russia's influence in East Asia, particularly in Manchuria and Korea, rapidly diminished. Japan emerged as the dominant force in Korea, paving the way for its annexation in 1910. But the impact extended far beyond these territorial changes. Other powers had to quickly adjust to this new reality. Britain, Japan's ally since 1902, initially welcomed Russia's defeat as it weakened their longtime rival in the Great Game for Central Asia. However, as Japan's power grew, British policymakers became increasingly concerned about their own interests in the region. Germany, on the other hand, saw potential in Japan as a counterweight to British and Russian influence, despite Kaiser Wilhelm II's infamous Yellow Peril rhetoric. Looking at the long-term consequences, it's clear that the Russo-Japanese War was a pivotal moment in world history. It marked Japan's emergence as a major world power and signaled the beginning of the end for European dominance in Asia. The war created a new multipolar order in East Asia, where Japan, and later China, would play increasingly important roles. This conflict, fought in the frozen plains of Manchuria and the waters of the Tsushima Strait, redrew the map of power in Asia. It challenged centuries-old assumptions and set the stage for the geopolitical landscape we know today. Diplomatic chess, the Treaty of Portsmouth. As the battlefields of Manchuria fell silent, the need for peace negotiations became urgent. Russia and Japan were both exhausted, their economies strained to the breaking point, yet neither side was ready to admit defeat or relinquish their ambitions in the region. This set the stage for a diplomatic chess match with far-reaching consequences for global politics. Enter Theodore Roosevelt, the energetic American president who saw an opportunity to assert U.S. influence on the world stage. Roosevelt offered to mediate the peace talks, a move that would later earn him the Nobel Peace Prize. But let's be clear, Roosevelt's motives weren't purely altruistic. He recognized that by brokering peace, the United States could position itself as a key player in Asian affairs. The negotiations, held in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, were fraught with tension. Roosevelt found himself walking a diplomatic tightrope, trying to balance the demands of both sides while advancing American interests. Key points of contention included control over Sakhalin Island, war reparations, and the future status of Korea. As the talks dragged on, the world held its breath. Would the negotiations collapse, potentially reigniting the conflict, or would a compromise be reached that could reshape the balance of power in East Asia? The Treaty of Portsmouth, signed on September 5, 1905, ultimately reflected a series of compromises. Japan gained control over Korea and parts of Manchuria, while Russia ceded half of Sakhalin Island. But Japan failed to secure the war reparations it sought, a point that would cause significant domestic discontent. The immediate reception of the treaty was mixed. Many in Japan felt cheated, believing their military victories deserved greater rewards. In Russia, the treaty was seen as a necessary evil, a chance to cut losses and refocus on internal issues. And for the United States, it marked a significant step onto the global diplomatic stage. Roosevelt's role in the negotiations had established America as a power broker in international affairs, a position that would shape global politics for decades to come. As the Treaty of Portsmouth was signed, the relationship between Japan and the United States began to transform. The two nations, once aligned against Russia, were about to enter a period of complex interactions that would shape the Pacific for decades. During the Russo-Japanese War, the United States had favored Japan. President Theodore Roosevelt's mediation offer was seen as friendly, and American public opinion supported the Japanese cause. The U.S. viewed Japan as a potential ally to balance Russian expansion in Asia and maintain the open-door policy for trade in China. However, Japan's victory led to a subtle shift in American perceptions. The success that had earned Japan admiration now began to stir unease. U.S. strategists, who had supported Japan's rise as a check against Russia, started to wonder if they had inadvertently created a new rival in the Pacific. Initially, relations remained cordial. The Taft-Katsura Agreement of 1905, recognizing Japan's interests in Korea and American control of the Philippines, seemed to promise mutual understanding. But beneath the surface, competing interests were emerging. Both nations had ambitions in the Pacific. Japan, emboldened by its victory, saw itself as the natural leader in East Asia. The U.S., particularly after acquiring the Philippines in 1898, was becoming more assertive as a Pacific power. These overlapping spheres of influence set the stage for future tensions. Race played a complex role in U.S.-Japan relations. While many Americans had admired Japan as a model of Asian modernization, old stereotypes resurfaced as Japan's power grew. The issue of Japanese immigration to the United States highlighted these tensions, culminating in the 1907 Gentlemen's Agreement to limit Japanese immigration in exchange for desegregating San Francisco's schools. As time passed, the relationship deteriorated further. The two nations clashed over naval expansion, control of Pacific Islands, and influence in China. The once friendly alliance gave way to suspicion and rivalry. The Russo-Japanese War had fundamentally altered perceptions of Japan's military capabilities. Japan's defeat of Russia demonstrated it was a force to be reckoned with, capable of besting a major European power. This new reality forced the United States and other Western nations to reassess their Pacific strategies. Japan's 1905 success had elevated it to the status of a potential rival to Western powers in the region. The military prowess that had impressed the world during the war now became a source of concern for American strategists. Looking back, it's clear that the seeds of future conflict were sown in the very victory that had initially brought Japan and the United States closer. The Russo-Japanese War had reshaped the balance of power in East Asia, setting in motion events that would ultimately lead to the Pacific theater of World War II. Let's appreciate how shared triumph can sometimes lead to rivalry, and how the currents of history can carry nations from friendship to conflict in just a few decades. You might be surprised by how quickly these relationships can change, but that's the nature of international politics. It's a complex dance of interests, perceptions, and power dynamics that continues to shape our world today. Legal experts worldwide faced an unprecedented situation. Before the Russo-Japanese War, international law was primarily a European affair. Japan's victory forced a re-evaluation of these norms, making the world recognize an Asian nation as an equal participant in international legal frameworks. The war's conduct challenged existing conventions in several ways, setting new precedents. For example, the treatment of prisoners of war tested the recently established Hague Conventions. Both Russia and Japan attempted to adhere to these rules, but the scale of the conflict pushed the boundaries of these new regulations. Their handling of captured soldiers set standards for future conflicts. Neutral observers and the international press played a crucial role, bringing the realities of modern warfare to global attention. Their presence on the battlefield exposed the world to trench warfare, naval battles, and new technologies like machine guns and long-range artillery. These reports compelled legal experts to reconsider how wars should be regulated. The war also revealed gaps in existing legal frameworks, particularly regarding territorial disputes and the rights of nations to engage in military conflicts. Japan's victory challenged the assumption that only European powers had the right to wage war and claim territory, leading to far-reaching consequences for international law. Looking back, it's clear that the Russo-Japanese War was a catalyst for change in international law. The lessons learned influenced the development of more comprehensive laws of warfare, shaping the legal landscape of the 20th century and beyond. This single conflict in 1905 rewrote the rules of global engagement, leaving a lasting impact on how we understand and regulate warfare today. Cultural shockwaves, art, literature, and popular culture. At the turn of the 20th century, societies were already in flux due to industrialization and new technologies. When news of the war broke out, it quickly spread through various media, captivating artists and writers who were always attuned to societal shifts. In literature, the war inspired a wave of works exploring East-West encounters. Writers like Jack London and James Joyce incorporated elements of the conflict into their stories, using it as a backdrop to examine imperialism, race, and modernity. This challenged existing stereotypes about Asian nations and forced Western audiences to reconsider their assumptions. The visual arts saw a similar impact. Japanese woodblock prints depicting battle scenes became highly sought after in Europe and America, influencing modernist art movements. Painters like Claude Monet and Vincent van Gogh, who had already been incorporating Japanese aesthetic elements, found their work gaining broader appreciation. The conflict also ignited a fascination with Japanese culture in the West. Suddenly, Japanese objects became fashionable accessories, leading to a deeper engagement with Japanese philosophy, religion, and ways of life. The image of Japan as a modern, powerful nation capable of defeating a European power challenged long-held notions of Western superiority. Looking at the war's long-term cultural legacy, it's clear that its impact was profound and far-reaching. The Russo-Japanese War helped break down cultural barriers and foster a more global perspective in the arts. It paved the way for greater cross-cultural exchange and understanding, setting the stage for our increasingly interconnected world. From the galleries of Paris to the theaters of New York, the echoes of those distant battles continued to resonate, shaping how people around the world perceived and interacted with Asian cultures for generations to come. Economic aftershocks, the price of war. The Russo-Japanese War had profound economic consequences that reshaped the political landscape of Europe and Asia for decades. While both nations poured astronomical sums into the conflict, the impact was particularly devastating for Russia. Russia's vast territory and resources initially gave an appearance of financial stability. However, the war exposed deep-seated inefficiencies and corruption that were already straining the empire's coffers. The need to transport troops and supplies across Siberia via the incomplete Trans-Siberian Railway drained the treasury at an alarming rate. As war expenditures mounted, the Russian government diverted funds from crucial domestic programs. This led to widespread hardship among the people, with soaring inflation and food shortages becoming increasingly common. The economic turmoil fueled growing discontent, contributing significantly to the social unrest that culminated in the 1905 Russian Revolution. The long-term economic consequences for Russia were severe. The conflict forced a dramatic shift in foreign policy, reorienting focus away from East Asian expansionism towards European affairs, particularly the Balkans. In the wake of defeat, Russia experienced a stock market crash as investor confidence plummeted. This financial instability laid the groundwork for future revolutionary movements, undermining the legitimacy of the Tsarist regime. Japan, despite its victory, emerged from the war saddled with enormous debt. While the government tried to portray this as a necessary sacrifice for national glory, the reality was that Japan's economy would feel the effects of this financial burden for years to come. The economic aftershocks of the Russo-Japanese War had far-reaching implications. They exposed vulnerabilities in both nations' economies and set the stage for significant political and social changes in the coming decades. Russia, at the turn of the 20th century, was a nation of stark contrasts, a vast empire grappling with widespread poverty, industrial unrest, and growing calls for political reform. The war exacerbated these underlying issues, exposing significant weaknesses in Russia's military strategy and governance. As news of defeats reached home, public confidence in the Tsarist regime plummeted. Returning soldiers, facing dire economic conditions, became vectors for revolutionary ideas. Workers in rapidly industrializing cities, already struggling with poor living conditions and low wages, saw their grievances intensify as the war drained resources from social programs. Liberal intellectuals and the emerging middle class viewed Russia's defeat as a clear sign of the autocratic system's failure. The tension reached a boiling point on January 22, 1905, in an event known as Bloody Sunday. When government troops fired on peaceful demonstrators, it shattered any remaining illusions about the Tsar's benevolence and sparked widespread outrage. In the months that followed, Russia was engulfed in strikes, mutinies, and uprisings. Workers walked out of factories, sailors mutinied, and peasants seized land from wealthy landowners. Tsar Nicholas II, forced to make concessions, issued the October Manifesto, promising civil liberties and an elected parliament. While this marked a shift towards constitutional governance, many revolutionary groups found it insufficient. The 1905 revolution, though ultimately suppressed, exposed deep-seated weaknesses in the Tsarist system and set the stage for the more radical revolutions of 1917. The echoes of 1905 would resonate through Russian history, a reminder of how events on distant battlefields can have profound and unexpected consequences at home. The Russo-Japanese War had shaken the very foundations of Russian society, igniting a revolutionary spark that would continue to smolder in the years to come. Before the war, international socialism was growing, but often fragmented along national lines. The conflict between Russia and Japan, however, provided an unexpected catalyst for change. It energized socialist movements worldwide, challenging them to think beyond borders and consider the global nature of capitalist exploitation. Socialists in different countries saw the war through various lenses, but all found ways to use it to advance their cause. In Russia, Lenin and Trotsky leveraged the war's unpopularity to bolster support for revolution. Germany's Rosa Luxemburg viewed it as evidence of capitalism's imperialist tendencies. These diverse interpretations all contributed to a more nuanced understanding of imperialism and its relationship to capitalism. The war's aftermath saw significant growth in socialist and labor movements. Even in victorious Japan, labor unrest increased as workers demanded their share of the nation's newfound prestige. This period marked a shift in socialist strategy. Colonial peoples were increasingly seen as potential allies in the fight against global capitalism. The idea of international solidarity gained traction, with the Second International grappling with how to prevent future wars and unite workers across national boundaries. The Russo-Japanese War pushed many socialists towards a more radical, revolutionary outlook. The gradual reform of capitalism through parliamentary means lost ground to more militant approaches. The conflict had demonstrated the fundamental incompatibility between working-class interests and those of the ruling elite, especially in matters of war and peace. In essence, the war did more than redraw East Asia's map. It provided both a rallying cry and a cautionary tale for the global socialist movement. The clash of empires became a catalyst for international working-class solidarity, setting the stage for the revolutionary upheavals that would define the 20th century. This pivotal moment reminds us how global events can shape ideological movements in unexpected ways, turning military outcomes into political opportunities on a world stage. Challenging racial hierarchies. W.E.B. Du Bois's perspective. As Japan's victory over Russia sent shockwaves around the world, it caught the attention of W.E.B. Du Bois, a prominent figure in the early civil rights movement in America. Du Bois, already known for his work as a sociologist, writer, and activist, saw in this conflict an opportunity to challenge the very foundations of white supremacy. Du Bois' reaction to Japan's triumph was one of excitement and hope. He viewed it as a powerful demonstration that non-white nations could successfully resist European imperial powers. This victory carried immense symbolic weight, as it directly contradicted the prevailing pseudo-scientific theories of racial hierarchy that were widely accepted in Western academia and popular culture at the time. These theories, which placed white Europeans at the top of a supposed racial pyramid, were suddenly called into question. How could an inferior race defeat a superior one? Du Bois seized on this contradiction, using it to challenge racist ideology. He argued that Japan's victory had broken the foolish modern magic of the word white, exposing the fallacy of white supremacy. Du Bois' analysis of the war's implications went beyond mere celebration of Japan's military success. He saw it as a potential catalyst for resistance against colonialism and racial oppression worldwide. If Japan could stand up to a European power, Du Bois reasoned, it could inspire other non-white nations and peoples to challenge their own oppressors. This event profoundly impacted Du Bois's philosophy, reinforcing his belief in the interconnectedness of racial struggles globally. It led to the development of what some scholars call his Afro-Asian philosophy, where he began to see the fight for civil rights in America as part of a larger global struggle against white supremacy and colonialism. Du Bois' interpretation of the Russo-Japanese War shaped his subsequent writings and strategies. He used this historical moment to argue for the importance of global solidarity among oppressed peoples. In his essays and speeches, Du Bois drew parallels between Japan's military victory and the potential for success in the civil rights movement, encouraging African Americans to see their struggle as part of a wider international context. Moreover, Du Bois used the war as evidence to counter racist arguments about inherent racial superiority. He pointed to Japan's technological and military advancements as proof that progress and modernization were not exclusive to white Western nations. Gandhi's awakening, seeds of nonviolent resistance. In the early 1900s, Gandhi was working as a lawyer in South Africa, fighting against racial discrimination. The news of Japan's victory over Russia in 1905 struck him like a bolt of lightning. Here was an Asian nation, long considered inferior by Western powers, standing toe-to-toe with a European giant and emerging victorious. Gandhi saw Japan's triumph as proof that Asian nations could resist and overcome Western domination. He recognized that Japan had modernized on its own terms, adopting Western technologies and practices while maintaining its cultural identity. This balance fascinated him and sparked ideas about how India might forge its own path to independence. As Gandhi reflected on Japan's victory, his thinking began to evolve in a unique direction. While many saw the military triumph as a call to arms, Gandhi's mind turned to questioning the very nature of power itself. Was military might the only way to challenge an empire, or could there be another form of strength, one that didn't rely on violence? Gandhi began to see moral and spiritual power as potentially more potent than physical force. He reasoned that, if enough people united in a common cause, refusing to cooperate with unjust laws and practices, they could paralyze an oppressive system without firing a single shot. This idea would eventually evolve into his concept of satyagraha, or nonviolent resistance. The Russo-Japanese War served as a catalyst, pushing Gandhi to reconsider his assumptions about power, resistance, and the relationship between colonizer and colonized. As his philosophy developed, he began to envision a different kind of victory for India, one achieved not through force of arms, but through force of will and moral conviction. Gandhi's approach differed significantly from other independence movements inspired by Japan's victory. While some leaders saw Japan as a model for rapid modernization and military buildup, Gandhi emphasized self-reliance, cultural preservation, and nonviolent resistance. He believed that India could achieve independence without sacrificing its soul in the process. Gandhi's evolving views on resistance and power would have profound implications for India's struggle for independence. His philosophy of nonviolent civil disobedience, partly inspired by the lessons he drew from the Russo-Japanese War, would become a powerful tool in challenging British rule. It would also influence civil rights movements around the world, from the American South to South Africa. In the end, the Russo-Japanese War did more than just redraw the map of East Asia. It planted the seeds of a revolutionary approach to resistance in the mind of one of the 20th century's most influential leaders. Gandhi's interpretation of Japan's victory, focusing on moral force rather than military might, would go on to shape the course of history in ways that the war's participants could never have imagined. Gandhi's writings and actions in the years following the conflict reflect its impact. His emphasis on Asian self-reliance, his belief in the power of united nonviolent action, and his critique of Western claims to superiority all bear the imprint of the lessons he drew from Japan's unexpected triumph. As we reflect on Gandhi's journey from a young lawyer in South Africa to the father of Indian independence, we can see how a single event can spark a revolution in thought. The Russo-Japanese War, viewed through Gandhi's eyes, transformed from a military conflict into a parable about the nature of power and resistance. Ataturk's blueprint, modernizing Turkey. Mustafa Kemal, later known as Ataturk, saw it as a blueprint for transforming his own nation. As a young Ottoman officer, Ataturk recognized the Russo-Japanese War as a pivotal moment, demonstrating how a non-European nation could successfully modernize and defeat a major European power. Ataturk's analysis of the conflict went beyond military tactics. He viewed Japan's victory as proof that a nation could adopt Western military techniques while maintaining its national identity. This principle became a cornerstone of his vision for Turkey's future. He was particularly impressed by Japan's ability to maintain high troop morale and their decentralized command structure, which allowed for rapid decision-making on the battlefield. As Ataturk rose through the ranks and eventually became the leader of the Turkish national movement, these lessons from the Russo-Japanese War continued to shape his thinking. He drew parallels between Japan's situation before its modernization and the challenges facing the Ottoman Empire. Both were ancient Asian civilizations grappling with Western imperialism and the need for rapid modernization. Ataturk's future reforms in Turkey would bear the unmistakable imprint of Japan's example, from overhauling the education system to modernizing the military, from reforming the legal code to promoting industrialization. His approach mirrored Japan's comprehensive transformation. He sought to create a modern, secular state that could stand as an equal to Western powers while maintaining its unique cultural identity. Consider, for example, how Ataturk implemented a wide-ranging modernization campaign that touched every aspect of Turkish society. He introduced language reform, promoted women's rights, and restructured the legal system. In the end, Ataturk's interpretation and application of Japan's strategies reshaped Turkey in profound ways. Turkey, under Ataturk's leadership, transformed from the sick man of Europe into a strong, independent nation. The Russo-Japanese War, viewed through Ataturk's eyes, became more than a distant conflict. It was a lesson in national reinvention. Southeast Asian echoes, nascent nationalist movements. The echoes of Japan's victory over Russia reverberated across Southeast Asia, igniting the imaginations of a new generation of leaders. The impact of this unexpected triumph spread through newspapers, telegraphs, and word of mouth, reaching local elites, students, and emerging nationalist figures in colonies controlled by European powers. In Vietnam, a young Nguyen Thot Thanh, later known as Ho Chi Minh, found inspiration in Japan's success. He saw it as proof that a small nation can defeat a large one, an idea that would shape his future strategies against French and American forces. Meanwhile, in the Philippines, then under American rule, Emilio Aguinaldo, a leader in the Philippine Revolution, viewed Russia's defeat as an opportunity for Asian nations to rise against Western powers. The war's outcome sparked a cultural and educational renaissance across Southeast Asia. In Indonesia, it inspired the creation of new schools, blending modern education with Islamic teachings, which became hotbeds of nationalist sentiment. Burma saw the growth of the Young Men's Buddhist Association, advocating for political reforms while preserving Buddhist culture. Japan's victory also led to a surge in students seeking education abroad, particularly in Japan. These students returned home with new ideas about nationalism, democracy, and social reform, forming the backbone of future independence movements. However, the path from Japan's triumph to Southeast Asian independence wasn't straightforward. Colonial authorities, concerned about growing nationalist sentiments, responded with a mix of repression and limited reforms. Japan's own imperial ambitions in the region would later complicate its relationship with Southeast Asian nationalist movements, leading to disillusionment among many who had once looked to it for inspiration. Despite these complexities, the Russo-Japanese War's impact on Southeast Asian nationalism was profound. China under the Qing dynasty was struggling to adapt to a rapidly changing world. The once mighty empire had been humbled by a series of defeats and unequal treaties with Western powers. When news of Japan's stunning victory over Russia reached China in 1905, it sent shockwaves through Chinese society. Here was a fellow Asian nation standing toe-to-toe with a European giant and emerging victorious. The reaction in China was electric. Intellectuals, students, and even some officials saw in Japan's triumph a glimmer of hope for their own nation's future. The impact of the Russo-Japanese War on Chinese reformers and revolutionaries was profound. It challenged long-held beliefs about the superiority of Western civilization and sparked a renewed interest in modernization and national revival. Chinese students and intellectuals flocked to Japan in unprecedented numbers, eager to learn the secrets of its rapid modernization. They returned home with new ideas about nationalism, democracy, and social reform. Japan's victory ignited a fierce pride in Chinese heritage and a determination to reclaim China's place on the world stage. This newfound nationalism manifested in various ways, from boycotts of foreign goods to the establishment of modern schools and industries. The war's aftermath saw a surge in revolutionary activities across China. Secret societies and political political organizations proliferated, all dedicated to overthrowing the Qing dynasty and establishing a modern Chinese state. The Tongmenghui, or Revolutionary Alliance, founded by Sun Yat-sen in 1905, gained significant traction during this period. He famously remarked, "The Japanese have shown that it is possible to modernize without losing our essence." This idea became central to Sun's vision for China. Inspired by Japan's example, Sun argued for a comprehensive modernization of China, encompassing military, education, government, and industry. "If we do not reform, we will be left behind," he warned, his sense of urgency fueled by Japan's success. This became a driving force in Sun's revolutionary activities. Sun's admiration for Japan extended to seeing it as a potential ally against Western imperialism in Asia. He actively sought Japanese support for his revolutionary cause, recognizing that Japan's new status on the world stage could lend credibility to his efforts. However, Sun's relationship with Japan was complex. While he admired its achievements, he was also wary of its growing imperial ambitions in Asia. The war's outcome reinforced Sun's belief in the importance of national unity and collective effort for resisting foreign oppression. He drew parallels between Japan's successful resistance against Russia and his vision for China's future. Sun argued that China, with its vast population and resources, could achieve even greater things if it could unite and modernize as Japan had done. Sun used Japan's success as a rallying cry for Chinese nationalism, urging his countrymen to overthrow the Qing dynasty and embrace a new, modern Chinese identity. "The world must realize," Sun declared, "that the strength of a nation is not in its size but in its spirit." While his dream of a unified modern China would face numerous challenges, the seeds he planted would grow into the sweeping changes that transformed China in the 20th century. Sun's vision of a modern, democratic China resonated with many who had been inspired by Japan's success. As revolutionary fervor grew, the Qing government found itself increasingly out of touch with the changing tide of public opinion. Their attempts at reform were seen as too little, too late by many Chinese. The revolutionary spirit kindled by Japan's victory ultimately led to the Xinhai Revolution of 1911, which ended over 2,000 years of imperial rule in China and established the Republic of China, was in many ways the culmination of the revolutionary fervor inspired by Japan's victory and articulated by Sun Yat-sen. Sun's legacy continues to influence Chinese politics and society to this day. The war that inspired China's revolution also played a crucial role in setting the stage for World War I. Japan's victory elevated it to the status of a great power, disrupting the delicate balance in Europe and Asia. The weakening of Russia, coupled with the rise of Japan and the instability in China, created new tensions and rivalries among the world's powers. These shifting alliances and heightened nationalist sentiments across the globe would contribute to the powder keg that exploded in 1914, plunging the world into unprecedented conflict. The Russo-Japanese War becomes more than just a regional conflict. It stands as a pivotal moment that reshaped the global order, challenging old assumptions and setting the stage for the tumultuous century that followed. The Russo-Japanese War left an indelible mark on military doctrine and strategy. Many of the tactics and technologies first employed in this conflict became standard practice in modern warfare. The use of trenches and fortifications during the siege of Port Arthur foreshadowed the trench warfare of World War I. Today, military strategists study this conflict to understand how smaller, technologically advanced forces can defeat larger, traditional military powers, a lesson that continues to influence military planning and arms development worldwide. The war influenced the development of naval strategy significantly. The Battle of Tsushima, where the Japanese fleet decisively defeated the Russian Baltic Fleet, demonstrated the importance of speed, coordination, and long-range gunnery in naval combat. These principles continue to guide naval doctrine today, with modern navies focusing on advanced targeting systems and coordinated fleet actions. The war's legacy extends beyond military tactics, influencing diplomatic relations and territorial disputes in East Asia. The ongoing dispute between Russia and Japan over the Kuril Islands, known in Japan as the Northern Territories, has its roots in the ambiguous territorial settlements following the Russo-Japanese War. This unresolved issue has prevented Russia and Japan from formally signing a peace treaty more than 75 years after the end of World War II. The conflict established a long-standing rivalry between Russia and Japan that persisted throughout the 20th century. This rivalry, characterized by mutual suspicion and competition for regional influence, has played a significant role in shaping East Asian geopolitics. Even today, as both nations navigate their relationships with China and the United States. The echoes of their past conflict influenced their strategic calculations. The Russo-Japanese War altered how nations think about power, technology, and strategy in global conflicts. Japan's victory over a European power shattered the myth of Western invincibility and inspired anti-colonial movements across Asia and Africa. This shift in perspective continues to influence international relations as nations grapple with the legacy of colonialism and the changing balance of global power. From the rise of Japan as a world power to the weakening of the Russian Empire, from the development of modern military tactics to the inspiration of anti-colonial movements, the consequences of this conflict continue to reverberate through time. As we look at current geopolitical tensions, whether in the South China Sea or the Middle East, we can often trace their roots back to the seismic shifts caused by the Russo-Japanese War. Thank you for joining us on Echoes, Events That Shaped Japan. If you enjoyed uncovering these hidden stories of Japanese history, there's much more to discover. Find us wherever you listen to podcasts or watch the enhanced visual episodes on our YouTube channel. Each platform offers a unique way to experience these fascinating historical narratives. Journey through the pivotal moments of Japanese history that Western textbooks overlooked. Each episode unravels the complex threads of Japan's past, revealing how events from the past 150 years continue to influence modern Japanese society, culture, and identity. From the halls of power to the streets of Tokyo, discover how these historical echoes shape everything from contemporary politics to pop culture. Through meticulously researched narratives and expert insights, explore the lesser-known events that forged modern Japan. Your host, an accomplished photojournalist published in the New York Times and Washington Post, brings these stories to life with unprecedented access to both Japanese and Western perspectives. Each episode is thoroughly researched, drawing from academic sources and scholarly publications, ensuring you receive accurate, nuanced insights into the events that continue to echo through Japanese society today. Want to dive deeper? Join our community on Patreon, where members get access to behind-the-scenes research, source materials, and reading lists. Early access to upcoming episodes. The best part? You can become a member at no cost and start exploring exclusive content right away. Remember to subscribe, share with friends who love Japanese history and culture, and join us next time as we continue to explore the echoes that shaped modern Japan. Echoes. 日本の歴史を築いた出来事。